It is live. We are live, and welcome to Virtually Connecting. I'm Alan Levine. I'm coming to you from Mortlach, Saskatchewan, and I'm connecting to some good friends and folks in Fredericksburg, Virginia at Digiped, and we'll go to them last because they have a lot of people in the room and they're the key attraction. But just quickly, I'm going to ask everybody just to say hi, hello, where you're from, and we'll start with on the left, Rissa.
Hi, my name is Clarissa Sorensen Unruh, but I'm otherwise known as Rissa Kim on Twitter, and I am from Albuquerque, New Mexico. So yay, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Love Albuquerque. And then we'll go to Fuji next.
Hey, I'm Fuji. I'm in North Carolina. I'm an anthropologist, but I'm associate dean of faculty right now.
Excellent. Great to meet you, Fuji. And then I'll ask Liana to say hello.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liana. I am from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Excellent. All the continents. And next, we'll go over to Cairo to say hello to Maha and her special guest who runs the show.
What happened to the... I'm Maha Bailey from the American University in Cairo, and I'm the co-founder of Virtually Connecting. You want to say who you are? Not really? Okay.
Okay, you tell them.
They know who you are. Everyone knows who you are. You're the most famous person on YouTube.
Yes. He is, definitely. And then we're going to go down to Guadalajara to say hello to Marisol.
Hi, I'm Marisol, University of Guadalajara. I'm from Mexico.
I miss so much about Guadalajara. We'll jump over to New Hampshire, where it's good to see my friend Robin DeRosa.
Hey, I'm Robin, and I'm in New Hampshire.
Stop giving away the ending.
Stole everything I had.
Yeah. Sounds like you're still on sabbatical.
I'm on sabbatical.
Excellent. And she's smiling. And we're going to hop over the ocean to Sheila.
Hi, I'm Sheila McNeil, and I'm in Glasgow in Scotland, and the sun has just come out, so I may have to move.
There's something wrong in Scotland. No, actually, there's nothing.
Yeah.
We'll say, have Vanessa say hello. Oh, nope.
You're still muted.
You have to unmute. She's saying, hi, I'm Vanessa.
Yes, Vanessa Vale, the retired Northeast Colorado, the flat part of the state, via Mountaineer, New Mexico, by the way.
Excellent. Great to have you with us, Vanessa. And now to the room, the main attraction. We'll go over to my friend Jim Luke and a whole room full of other folks.
Hi, I'm Jim Luke. I'm one of the two on-site buddies here, and I'll turn it over to my other on-site buddy, Karen Gangelozzi.
Yep, so he just said my name.
Well,
Karen, I'm an on-site buddy for Virtually Connecting.
I'm Chris Schaffer. I'm a data scientist currently from Boulder, but before that from here, and I'm teaching data code action this week.
I'm Amy Collier. My role is Associate Provost for Digital Learning at Middlebury, which is in Vermont and in Monterey, California, and all over the world. And I'm glad to be here.
What are you teaching?
I'm teaching the design track.
Thank you. I'm Lee Scala-Bissett. I'm currently a learning design specialist, yes, at Georgetown University in DC. I worked here at UMW for a period of time. I taught the one-day track on, what did I teach? Digital fluency, thank you. And also a workshop on affect and faculty development.
Excellent. Did we get everybody?
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. So the main thing is, what color is Amy's hair? No, I promise we wouldn't do that. So it's the last day. Is everybody looks pretty energetic. How's it going today?
It's a facade.
Yeah. They fed us turkey at lunch, so we're gonna yeah, exactly. The tryptophan is about to kick in pretty hard.
I see no evidence. So I really want other people to talk, but give us some highlights on what you're looking forward for the last little bit of it.
A highlight for me, I'm also taking Chris's data track, and it's just been really fun and exciting to sort of finally get to practice a lot of the stuff. Chris and I worked together here, and I sat directly next to him and watched him do data analysis and a bit of coding, both in R and Python. And it's just really nice to be able to actually get in there and do some of that work. So have those critical conversations around it, but then get in and do it and feel a little bit more confident about these things. It's been really great to finally, like I said, practice it. So I've never really had a reason to do so, but I've watched a lot and I've been curious about it for a while.
So what kind of things have you done in the workshops, Lee?
We made scatter plots and linear regression. We drew lines.
Yeah.
We smoothed things out. We jittered them. We learned about Tibbles.
And organic farm and Tibble data.
And organic farm and Tibble data.
A few inside jokes in there.
And we are going to be looking at this afternoon. We're all going to be looking at the Digital Pedagogy Lab tweets and seeing what we can learn and find out, and also how terrifying Twitter can be in terms of how much data they collect on us. And then other third parties can collect on us through the Twitter API. So it should be fun, funsies.
Okay, people in the chat want to know what Tibbles are.
Chris, what's a Tibble?
A table of data that follows the principles of tidy data work, so tidy table. So that means every row is an observation, every row is a variable or a parameter. There's no weird, messy hierarchy. It's nice and clean and neat and easy to run through these kind of foundational functions. So it's kind of, it's clean, it's easy to work with.
But it looks nothing like my spreadsheets, I assume.
No, a spreadsheet usually is actually tidy.
Okay.
Unless you start doing like merging cells and things like that, no.
Clarissa's asking, did you do ANOVA, multiple regression, multivariate, and cool? Oh, she's saying that's cool, I think.
I told them what most of those words mean.
Yes.
Well enough, so and it gave them some slides to refer back to, so that when they read a white paper from Newton, which we did, you can kind of read through some of the jargon and figure out what they are and aren't saying, so you can ask good questions before large amounts of money gets spent or student agency gets compromised in ways that are not worth the trade-off.
Cool.
Yeah, I said I wish I'd taken that stats class that no one ever offered me. Humanities PhD, what do you need stats for?
Fuji's asking about iGraph.
I use that, and then I pipe it in a ggraph, which is a little prettier, but we haven't done that. No. We haven't done everything in R. We've almost made it to the end of the first chapter of code in R for data science.
Which is actually chapter 3, but
yeah, and then we've had a lot of critical discussions around what we're doing and what other people are doing with our data.
Basically, yesterday we got to the point in the book, it's like, well, this is now going to get challenging. And I went, it's the end of the day on Thursday. And I think that I feel very confident and I don't want to ruin that feeling by going into this complicated part where it's going to melt my brain because I can barely read simple sentences anymore, let alone understand what lines of code are trying to do to numbers and letters and what they represent. So, but
I'm always amazed that Chris has a PhD in music and he does this stuff. I have a computer science undergrad and I don't want to do this stuff. so it's funny. I wanted to know how Amy's track is going because Chris' friend yesterday was like, every year I want to be in Amy's track and I get into it. And I know Lee also gave a 1-day track, right? And a workshop. So I wanted to hear about those as well. I know everybody likes data, but I also want to listen to you guys.
The design track is going really, really well. It's a wonderful group of people, a nice sized group of 20. So we've gotten to know each other really well. I think the reason people always say they want to be in the track is only because we have lots of colored paper and pipe cleaners and markers.
Make the rest of us look bad.
It's play all day and play with a purpose, of course. The idea is to make a space. And I think I would say this is probably true of the conference in general, that just the space to think about the things that are on your mind or in your heart and to draw them or to rip up paper and try to use that to think of what it means to be in this moment at your institution or in your professional life where you're wanting to do something, whether it's make a change to your course or make a change to the way we deal with student data or whatever it is. And so the design track is really both about blowing up conceptions of design that are about a rigid process that starts at one thing and ends at the end, and everything in between is all step by step, and really about engaging with the challenges that we face in our classroom and engaging with our students in a really humane way, with listening, with free writing, with things that help us to kind of become free of what keeps us from doing the design we want to do. And also building the community around that, because honestly, the designs that we do are better when we do them with input from others around us or from others in our professional network. So that's a bit of what the track's been.
I wanted for people who are like sitting with their mute button on and not answering questions. Does everybody have like a good sense about what the DigPed like environment or structure is? Do you want to ask questions about the experience there, or do you want to just talk about Python?
I actually am very interested in what the structure is, because I only filled out the fellow application via blog because I knew I wasn't able to go to the DigPed moment, and then I ended up not being able to go to my BCCE moment either. So I'm really interested in the structure and how the whole thing works, and what you guys feel like the most important aspects of it are.
And maybe like what makes it different from a conference.
You've done this longer than I have. Chris might be able to answer this too. He's the one for.
I'm the noob.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm the noob because this was my first, and I would say a couple of things that make this really different. One is, in a normal conference, you have concurrent tracks and stuff, but you're always mixing and matching. You're going this. There's some opportunities to do that. There's like an hour for workshops during the day, but basically it's a cohort seminar that you do for the whole 4 days. So it's pretty intense, and you're doing it together, kind of seminar format. So it's actually closer. I think the word institute fits much better than conference. This is like taking to me, this is like taking a 10-week graduate course in 1 week.
That's a really apt description. Yeah, essentially you join a track. And this year, unlike previous years, they made a format modification. So the first day of the week was a 1-day workshop. So Lee did one of those where you spend time intensively around a topic area. And then the remaining 4 days, you picked a different track if you were doing both. And so there was design, there was data and action, there was privacy, there was digital literacies, writing. Yep, thank you. Intro. Yep. Is that everybody? I think that's it. And then interspersed, and so you had about 2 hours ish in the morning with your track, lunch, 2-ish hours in the afternoon with your track, and then sprinkled in there were workshops that were run by fellows. There were keynotes, and there were opportunities. But every day, one of my favorite things about this event is that every day we start all together in the same room, independent of where you're going from that point. And somebody sets the intention, and it's a reflection moment. It's a moment to think about something that somebody else is reflecting on or is wanting to bring to the group. And it's a nice moment to kind of all come together. And uniquely, it tends to be led by women at the conference. And I think, one of the things that's been noted is that the willingness to not have manels.
Yeah, I was gonna say no manels allowed.
No manels allowed has been, it shows. It's very clear that there's intentional work around voice and representation and opportunity.
What was it that she said this morning about the difference between inclusion and, what was it? There's being in, but then there's also just being
belonging.
Belonging, that's it. There's a difference between being included and belonging. And that she was saying she's a scholar of color, and she was saying that, I go to lots of places where I feel included, but not a lot of places where I feel like I belong. And she said, this is the first place where I felt like I belong, right? And I thought that was a really powerful statement and a really good distillation of the ethos, at least that we try to create here at Digital Pedagogy Lab, is that of not just inclusion, but a belonging. And I think that's really an important thing that differentiates it from a conference.
I think as someone who's recently left academia, I feel like I still belong here, because what unifies is not like a lot of conferences. We talked about this yesterday in our little faculty reflection time, that a lot of conferences were united by the topic material, but we're divided by what we're trying to do with it, or what we're trying to say with it, or how we're trying to compete over being the first or the best or whatever to say those things.
Or by institution type and title and status. And
so here we're united by a mission that's even bigger than education. Education is part of it. So critical pedagogy is about humanity in general, and even probably bigger than that. And so to be in a place where we've got people, and my track in particular has probably the lowest percentage of active full-time teachers in it. And so to see like, hey, we're coming from a wide variety. We have K through 12 data administrators, journalists, teachers, instructional technologists, librarians, and then industry people together. And we belong together. Like, it makes sense for us to be together working on this, because the project is bigger than here's 3 more tools for your class.
What's really another thing that I really appreciate is the willingness to I don't want to say the word experiment, but think outside the box is also so cliche. Good grief! But it's Friday. Give me a break. But push the envelope. There we go. Rip open the envelope and have glitter sprinkle everywhere. I don't know. Cliche Friday.
Glitter Bomb the Academy.
Yeah, Glitter Bomb.
That's gonna be the T-shirt next year.
Next year should be glitter as our theme. This year was rainbows. Yeah. Oh my God, I want a sparkly DPL. Make note of that. I want a sparkly DPL T-shirt next year. Anyways, as I was saying,
we can just go to Michael's afterwards.
Yeah. You can bring Cassie and then clean up my house after. All right. Cassie's my daughter. She loves glitter. So I proposed a workshop on affect and faculty development. And a workshop for a loose term, other than the fact that it's just like, oh, it lasts an hour and a half and we're going to get together and talk about things, which is what we recognize as kind of workshop format. But, just to be able to have a space where I can say something like, I want to talk about affect and faculty development. And it turned out to be a little bit more like affect and staff labor. But just to have them say, yeah, do it. Let's see what happens. I don't know. I think it went well, right?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah, I went to it. And so in an hour and a half, how we can come together. It's about 10 of us, right?
At least.
Yeah, which was more than, because I didn't know what to expect. And I kind of walked in and was like, well, this isn't really a workshop because I don't have any answers at all. But let's talk about our feelings. And we did.
And I think because it said faculty development, not because it said affect.
Yeah. And awesome though. Good. Whatever works, man. Whatever gets people in the door. I'm all right. I'm like, yeah.
Can I just
but I think that there's a recognition and being ahead of the curve a little bit about saying like, these are important things that we haven't talked about yet and think that we need to talk about. So here's space to talk about them. And it really balances, for me, what I've always appreciated too, is the theoretical with the practical. Right, where we do talk a lot, like we're saying even in the data track, we read a lot about data and ethics and privacy and all of these kinds of things, and then we get our hands wet, hands dirty, whatever.
Probably both.
Probably both, and because I cry in R, and we can sort of go back and forth on that, and with the work that the practical work that they do informs the theoretical and ethical discussions that we have, and vice versa, right? So today we're going to start doing some really practical work on the Twitter stream. But before we started that, it led to a discussion around ethics. Like I said, a discussion around these sorts of things. The other track, the day-long track that I did was on digital fluency, which everybody then asked, like, well, what's the difference between yours on digital fluency and Jade's on digital literacy? And I said the word fluency, but what that day long session was really focused on is thinking about advocacy within our own institutions around this topic, and how can we start the conversations at our institutions about the topic of digital fluency and incorporating it more into the curriculum, as well as into our own daily practices and our own practices in that. So it was, again, it was this nice balance between the theoretical and the practical, and talking about you know, how do we build community on our campus around this? How do we find our allies and our champions? And how do we find opportunities for a campus that might not be open to these sorts of things, right? And so it was really a great chance to kind of move through those types of actions. And even the affect track, ultimately in an hour and a half, what I wanted to do is we took it from the personal. We did think pair share, but it was like, okay, we're going to do the personal because this is one way to deal with it, is journaling and working it out. And then we share it. Okay, well, now we found our small community that we trust. But then how do we take this and affect change within our institution to better address these very real issues around the labor that we perform? And of course, we didn't have any answers except, what was it? Stop rewarding the assholes, or what was it? Start punishing the assholes. Is that the final one that was there? One or the other. Am I allowed to swear? I'm sorry, Hoda. I just realized. Sorry.
Actually, you're spinning off some great tangents, so I'm going to try to recapture. It was asked in the chat and maybe answered some of the differences between DHSI, and I think some people may not know the acronyms, and the Digital Pedagogy Lab. And also, and we'll come back to Sheila's question about the affect session. But I think, chat people, have we answered that, or do you want to go with the people in the room and sort of what the difference is for people who are looking at these two different kinds of pedagogy conferences? Robin, we need to hear from Robin.
Okay, I don't want to regurgitate it all, but I mean, it's interesting because at DHSI I actually taught basically a hybrid ped course that's really inflected by DPL with Chris Friend, a course that Jesse has taught before. So in some ways, it was actually sort of exactly the same kinds of content that you would get at DPL, but I think a huge difference is the scale. So there's just a lot more, you do build a lot of intimacy at DHSI because similarly, it's sort of a week-long intensive with a small cohort. But you do feel as you move in the in-between spaces in DHSI that you're more anonymous, which I liked, on some level, but you don't kind of have that whole conference feel that Amy was talking about at DPL, where you kick off at a morning session and everybody kind of gets to know each other's face. And so the threads between the tracks weave a lot more. I think DHSI does that pretty well on their Twitter feed, as does DigPed. But other than the Twitter feed with DHSI, I think you don't get that sense of intimacy across the different pieces of that very large event. Although I do generally feel similarly exhausted at the end of DPL and DHSI, and they feel a little different, but they both wipe me out completely because of the intensity of the human connections, which for introverts, I think, it's very demanding in the best possible way because they are nurturing connections, but definitely I felt at both of those like, oh my God, I'm just ready to go in a hole. So much so that when next year comes along, I'm almost like, I might need one more year in between.
I'm a complete extrovert and I was very exhausted. And it's because I was emotionally overloaded. Yeah, I mean, you're an extrovert as well, Lee, right? It's just, you're connecting probably more than the introverts, but it's still overwhelming because they're not fluffy connections.
Yeah.
You're hearing a lot of really deep feelings, and there's a lot going on in the US right now. And so last year I was just overwhelmed with all the feelings that people wanted to share because it was this space where people were sharing it. But it was just a lot more than you're usually hearing in your everyday life.
I think
question?
Sheila had a question that she wanted to ask Lee about that affect session.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Alan. Yeah, Lee, Amy, I just want to say hi, having a bit of a fangirl moment here, seeing you both in person.
Right back at you.
So I'm really interested in the affect session and what you've just been saying. I mean, it sounds like an incredible experience, and yeah, that's why I'm joining the VC Connecting and trying to get a bit of that. But I'd be really interested in hearing some of the themes that came out of that, and just to see if that kind of resonated with some of the issues we're struggling with here in the UK as well.
I think I didn't, now to be honest, in an hour and a half, I actually just invited people to share at their tables, right, amongst themselves. But I think some of the things, and maybe Karen, since you were there, a lot of it is that there's the shared experience, right? It doesn't matter if we're, and it was a lot of staff. Were you your faculty? Like, were you the only one who was faculty?
It was hard to say because not everybody said.
Yes, that's true.
But I think there was a lot of staff.
Yeah. And so affect in dealing in teaching and working with students, affect in working with faculty, in working with administrators. And so there was really this moment of, oh, I'm not alone, right? People wanted to share their stories. Right. And I really was wanting them to reflect just for themselves why that story. Right. Because I asked them right at the beginning, I said, we're going to take 15 minutes and I want you to write out in detail a moment during your job, your work, where it involved a lot of affect. Right. And, you know, it was, again, one of those situations where I had to interrupt and like, OK, well, we have to stop writing now. And then had some talk about what is affective labor, what inspired this. What inspired for me was a lot of the work that Digital Humanities, Alt-Acs, and librarians have done around this work. So one of the ones that first caught my attention is Paige Morgan's Not Your DH Teddy Bear. And if you Google that, it's the first thing that comes up. So yeah, it's that emotional labor that comes with, and particularly for me as a faculty developer, but also academic technologists, this extra layer of emotions that comes with engaging with faculty when you want to engage them with technology, and the level of fear and the level of discomfort and the level of, everybody hates when I use this word, but the level of intimacy it requires to be able to do that kind of work, and what kind of stress and pressure that puts on the academic technologist, the faculty developer, the librarian. I also brought in I hope you haven't, or if you have, I'm sorry, read the really heinous Chronicle of Higher Education piece about the kinds of archivists you meet during your research, which, you know, was basically all about literally serving and mothering the faculty researcher, right? I'm the researcher and I'm the most important person and you are just there. I know and so sharing that and saying like librarians have been writing about this for a while because of the nature of their jobs. Even if they have tenure, they are still seen as a service, right? And it is seen as feminized labor, what librarians do. And so how does that spill over into our roles as quote unquote staff, regardless of where in the hierarchy you happen to fall? And that can be very difficult as well. And so just thinking through those kinds of things, it's, you know, like I said, I don't have any of the answers because I'm just, well, I can't say I'm just, I've been thinking about this and reading about this for 5 years. And I think I might be ready to articulate something about it, but I'm not quite there yet, as you can tell. It's there. I just don't know what I'm going to say really about it yet. Anything insightful. I don't think I have anything insightful right now than just like, pay attention, this is happening.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think that does resonate, that whole idea about service. I'm hearing that more and more here. And, you know, design as a service, you know, we don't really talk about instructional design so much over here, but it's just like we can help you do your, you know, you can just have a curriculum design service. And that is, and it's not quite like that. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What's been the biggest unexpected thing that's happened?
Sorry?
What's been a great unexpected part that's out of the program that's happened?
You were going to say something, so you didn't say it while we're thinking about it. Something unexpected.
Well, I have to run down to my track. My track is restarting right now, but I do want to just say, I mean, to the point about the nature of the work and the treatment of it as service, there's a lot behind that. Yeah. But one of the things we talk about in the design track is what we can learn from musicians whose creative process teaches us about the value of the different voices coming into a musical arrangement. And I've been trying to use that framing to think about the ways in which we move from a version of service to a version of partnership that looks more like a creative process around music. And there's not much there, but it's something that as the design team has really come around these ideas. We're talking about how we're a band right now and working through some of that stuff. So there's a lot there to play with.
But it's also, how do we have those conversations on our campus with faculty and with administrators to change the conversations, because we're starting to change them amongst ourselves. And that was part of what I wanted to try and tease out towards the end of the workshop, is like, okay, it's great that we all agree about this, but that doesn't change the larger institution and those conversations that, clearly that Chronicle of Higher Education piece, they're talking about us and not with us.
This is really demeaning.
Yes, it is. And it's really and that's another affective labor part of our job, where how valuable are we? Right? Very valuable, or, just something to be spoken about instead of with, so. But I like that. I like that music.
I like the side tattoo.
The music metaphors. We do know you have to go, so we don't want you to be late. But if people do want to stick around, they hang out.
I can stick around. Chris will forgive me.
It was nice to see you all. What a pleasure to spend time with you.
Time.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna run too, but it was great to see you all.
Great to see
So we're gonna have Lee with Jim's laptop, right? And then you can give him his laptop back later.
I'm going to stay for a little while. I should get to a track too, but I was late this morning, so I'll be late for this afternoon and even it out.
It's Chris though. I'm not too worried about it.
Right. Well, and it's Chris Gilliard for my track, and he'll just deal with it if he wants a ride to the airport.
Bye, Maha. It's good to see you all week. Okay.
Thank you, Karen. So, yeah, it was really weird at the beginning of the week. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, Marisol had a question after
really
we go.
weird at the beginning of the week, because there are 3 instructors named Chris. And so it was always, whose track are you taking? I'm in Chris's. I'm in Chris's too. And then we show up at the tracks, we're like, we met very different Chris's. We're all
there
excited.
are 3 Chris's, right? Chris Fern, Chris Gilliard, Chris Shepard.
Yeah.
You're good with any of them.
No, you are good with any of them. But I was like, Jim and I were talking, like, oh, we're going to be the same track all week. And then I was like, no, much different Chris's.
This is kind of fun. Where we're sitting is a conference room on the 4th floor at a long table, and we're facing a glass wall of the hallway. And so people are constantly walking by while we're on here, and they're all waving at us. So we're having a good time.
Yeah. So what was
if somebody sees Aaron, he was supposed to be in this session. He was really excited and fanboying the session, and he didn't show up. I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Marisol had a question.
Oh, go for it.
Hi. My question is, we already have a learning innovation process lab, but it's not really work, because it's coming on to like just for design courses, and it's just make a template. So it's not really innovation. So how we can do it? We want to try to do something different. And when I read about the digital pedagogical lab, and just really looks so interesting. How we can do it? What is the most advantage for doing digital lab? How can I do it? How we can change? Mm-hmm.
So I would say one of the things that which is really important about this one is it's not an imposed structure. Like you said, like there's this imposed structure that comes down and say, this is how you will innovate your learning. Right? That's like, as you said, it's totally counterproductive and it's totally counterintuitive. right? And we know that faculty are not going to go for that, right? There are some faculty who will say, yes, let's do that. It just makes my life easier. I just want plug and play. But again, that's not innovation. That's taking the easy way out, right? And so one of the things that it needs to be is it needs to be a collaboration with your faculty, right? Where you inform it, right? Again, it's that balance of theory and practice. So you balance it between, let's do critical readings about online learning. Let's do critical readings about learning innovation. And then let's come up with stuff, right? Let's try and figure stuff out that works for your teaching, for our students, for the discipline, and all of those kinds of things where it comes in. And, you know, it's okay to have a process. It's okay to have like a beginning and a middle and an end and an iterative process, because I think that's what teaching is. But if it's too locked into a certain formula, then it's going to lose all personality. So I think really working with the faculty, which can also be a challenge, and balancing theory versus practice and have it being really generative.
I saw on Twitter, I think Gardner Campbell actually said this, or someone was crediting him with saying this, but if it wasn't him, forgive me for not getting this right. But somebody tweeted out today that the network is the deliverable. And I loved that, the idea that with faculty development, it's not the artifact that you're working on or the course that you're working on or the one faculty member who needs to be rehabilitated and brought into the digital. And I loved Jade's whole thing about how she worked with that faculty member who was sort of digitally opposed, because really all of her interventions had nothing to do with the digital. It was just about like talking with the faculty member and hearing what they're trying to work on. But I think one of the big things with DigPed and a lot of the faculty development that I try to engage in with the communities on Twitter, for example, it's really about building a place to go to bounce your ideas and have them reflected back in unexpected ways that are outside of your norms. And that network becomes the powerful way of improving whatever artifacts you're working on. And I think places like DigPed center the network and make that work of network building visible so that you can learn how to do that and bring that back to your institutions. And I also think it's really about subverting traditional notions of networking, which are really mostly about personal competitive gain, and instead suggesting that a collaborative networking also builds a healthy commons space for growing ideas. So I think one of the things I'm really going to try to work on this coming year is helping the faculty I work with understand, you know, not just kind of trick them into networked collaboration, but help them understand that that network is the thing that we're trying to develop, and the artifacts will come out of that. So anyway.
And that can be really hard, though. We talked about that actually this morning during our time together. Was who was it? Laura, who was saying that she was at a conference once, and she at the end of the conference on the mantle, they said, be sure to write your president and dean thanking them for their financial support and sending you to this conference. And remember to use the language of return on investment
and value propositions.
And value propositions, because that is the language they hold in their heart. We all just about vomited. But there is that tension, right, where it becomes extraordinarily difficult, or it doesn't become, it has become extraordinarily difficult to sell administrators and even faculty on the network being the product, right, or the deliverable, right? They want something measurable, and there's always a danger where it's like, I made 27 connections, then it's worth it. I only made 20. Oh, you don't get funding for that one then. You know, it's trying to make that case both from above and, you know, at all different kinds of levels. And one of the things that I think has become very clear to me and needs to become clearer to the academia at large is that we need more collaborations between faculty and staff, We are not going to do this in isolation from each other, and we're not going to do this the way it currently is in most places, in competition with one another.
Yeah, I would add to this. I'm going to throw a thought out that I have been. This is going to be risky because it's going to be incomplete. We don't have enough time to go way into it, and I'm hoping. So please take it with a grain of, and everybody out there on the internet, with a grain of graciousness. What has struck me here at DigPed is my earlier analogy about this is a seminar. It's very different than conferences. And conferences are kind of like the traditional way of handling first-year undergrad education. It's somebody with the answer up there lecturing at you. This, in the track, there's been no answers. Chris and Bill Fitzgerald have not delivered any answers. They've delivered an intense experience that challenged us to think and involve ourselves and form our own ideas. I think what we need to do, though, is we've been talking about going back and changing our institutions, is we have to be careful to go back and live what we want and live what we experienced here, not go back and think of, oh, well, the unwashed faculty member that needs to be corrected, or, trust me, I hate administrators using language like value proposition. As somebody who had a previous career and was in the community that invented the word value proposition, trust me, higher ed administrators don't know what it means, and they've abused it. But, we need to go back with some compassion and work together to figure stuff out. And I don't know where that was all going, but we need to go back and actually live the values we want to see be happening. And with that, I shut down the conversation.
Yeah, but I think it's a good note to. I'm not in charge of this, but I'm going to take charge anyways from you guys. But I think that's actually a pretty good note to land on, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. We've gone 15 minutes over, and you all have things probably that you should be doing like we do, but that's okay. And thank you everyone for coming out for this and such great questions, and for having me. And
yeah, thanks for the involvement. Thanks to all the V-Connecting people that supported me and kind of guilted and arm twisted me to get involved and be on-site buddies. So
thank you, Jim. You did a great job at it. You and Karen, thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks, a lot of fun.
And despite the fact that it's a frantic rush when everything comes together and there's 5 minutes before going live, it's always so worth it. So, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm almost, and I say this is a little risky here, I was almost starting to get down into to really enjoying the challenges, like my old race driver self of, okay, I got 9 minutes, I got to get all this set up, I got to be able to make the connection, the network doesn't work, and bam, we did it with 60 seconds.
I know, you had a great pit crew, so
yes.
I'm going to thank everybody and stop the broadcast, and then I'm going to remember to save the chat because Maha asked me to, and it's always easy to forget that. So thank you, everybody. Have great days or evenings or wherever you are in the world, and we'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.